Generation Z, those ages 21 to 26 are entering the workforce this summer. So what does that mean for the future of work and career development, as well as workplace culture? Join us today as we talk about this topic on the CG Hour. Let's start the countdown. Welcome to the CG Hour, where every other month we come to you with the latest hot topics around technology and business. My name is Fanny Dunnigan, and I'm your host for the CG Hour. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. We're going live across LinkedIn as well as YouTube. So for those of you that are joining us online, welcome. And be sure to drop your details into the comments. Introduce yourself. Tell people what you do, where you're tuning in from. Make the comments a place for you to network and meet other people online. And I challenge you to connect with 3 new connections online and build your network as well. So as I was sharing, we are going to talk all around Generation Z and the future of work and the trends and predictions and the culture of that. So we did some research and wanted to kind of open up this show with our research video and share with you some of those stats. So let's roll that now. Welcome everybody. For those of you that are just joining us, we're going to talk all around Gen Z and the future of the workplace. Just want to give some quick shout outs to people in the audience. I see Jeannie from Georgetown, Texas, Irfan from Plano, Texas, Tracy Phillips, our friend from CG in Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome everybody. Again, be sure to introduce yourself and tell people where you're tuning in from. And now I want to introduce to you the guests and the stars of our show this episode. I'm going to start here on our right. We have Louis Mangiacapra. Welcome, Louis. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Fanny. Very excited to talk about this topic. I think it's going to be very exciting in hearing the different opinions and as we kind of dig into some of these.
Absolutely. So I want to read to you all what Louis, he is the Senior VP at CG Infinity for Cloud and Data. He's an experienced technology leader with 15 plus years focused on building, managing, and deploying enterprise-class data and analytics platforms. He's hands-on and well-versed in emerging technologies with a strong business acumen and a talent for identifying technology gaps that drive business goals and increase revenue. And he specializes in helping transform how organizations integrate people and modern technology to drive business outcomes. So thank you for joining us, Louis. And to my right here, we have Kiara Draper. Welcome, Kiara. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. I'm happy to be the representative of the Generation Z. It's pretty cool to be here and give a perspective.
Awesome.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. So Kiara is a highly accomplished professional with a strong background in technology and business. She graduated from the University of North Texas in 2022 with a degree in business integrated studies, specializing in computer information systems and marketing. And her passion for technology really blossomed during high school, which was really cool, through camps like Microsoft's Digi Girls, leading to her recognition in the 2020 Microsoft Diversity and Inclusion Report. And during college, she gained valuable experience through positions and internships through Chase Bank, Salesforce, as well as Microsoft. And those have allowed her to apply her business and technology knowledge. So thank you, Kiara.
Thank you.
And then last but not least, to my left here, we have Chuck Haseman. He is the professor and director at UTD, their RISE Center for Retail Innovation and Strategic Excellence. Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you.
And he is an industry-recognized leader in IT service management and transformation with over 40 years in retail and consumer product goods. And Chuck understands the key levers for achieving ROI and quality performance objectives from service integrations and helps clients focus on improving value through transformation. Rethink Retail selected Chuck as one of the top retail influencers of 2023, and he's currently the professor of practice and director for the Retail Center at Naveen Jindal School of Management at UTD, and a mentor for RevTech Accelerator, a high-growth retail ventures. So welcome, Chuck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. So we're going to dive right into the questions. This first segment, we're going to talk all about workplace culture and where we are now. Now, Louis, I know you're very involved in CG Infinity's internship programs and mentoring some of the junior consultants there. What are you looking for in fresh graduates as an employer?
Yeah, I think that's a great way. When we start looking at it, looking at the skill sets, right now, people are coming out of college and they have a diverse range. It's not really where they were doing just a single technology or a single discipline. It's very diverse, and you look at it as, how can I go train them up? How can I put them into different positions? So we start looking at, ChatGPT, all of these different YouTube out there. So it's not you're limited to this one vertical or this one technology. We can take them in, start plugging to all of these different places, and they're absorbing very, very fast. We're changing the paradigm from needing, an expert in there. You still need the expert, but they don't need to be an expert at that time. And we can take them and start looking at it and saying, hey, can you use YouTube to go get on here? Can you use ChatGPT? Can you use, your peers? So I think it's exposing them to a lot of different areas. Right now, most people have a phone tied to them or they have a laptop. So let's leverage that. If you're great at being able to jump on different topics or jump on different technologies, how can we bring people or skill them up to a way that they're not going to be a one-trick pony? They can go in, they can, be a developer one day, or they can help lead projects and have that kind of range of areas so they can come in, help with the client, help with the areas that they're doing it, but also learning and figuring out what they really like through that process.
So looking for that passion for learning,
absolutely.
Right? Adaptability.
Yeah, I think so, and getting in there. And I mean, just like when you enter college, you might not know what your degree is. You might think, I want to be an engineer, I want to be an astronaut or that. And then by the time 4, 5, 6 years later, you're like, I don't know why I got this degree. I think a lot of our hiring process is very similar. They come in, they're like, I think I want to be a developer. They get in, they're like, you know what? I don't really like the code. I like the project management, or I like people facing, or I'm like, I want to be maybe in a, lock me in a room, feed me pizza underneath the thing and get a case of Mountain Dew and I'm good to go.
And program.
Exactly. And so I don't want to talk to customers. I don't want to do sales. Right. So getting to apply people into different areas, to go and try out and say, do you like this? And if you do, you always need to have kind of your 3 main focuses: something you're great at, something you're all right, and something you're aspirational. And now let's plug these folks into the different areas and see what sticks. And something they think they might like, they get in there and they're like, this is the worst thing ever. Yeah. Perfect. Well, you have it. You can put it in your tool belt. let's keep going.
Awesome. Now, Kiara, you've had some amazing internships at big brands like Chase Bank, Microsoft, Salesforce. What has that kind of taught you or given you a perspective of what to look for in employers?
Yes, so that journey and process was very intentional. Even before I started college, I knew that, okay, I want to get my education. That's a big value. I need to build my skill set. However, I do want to get in the workplace and get that real world experience and gaining that insight. I did a lot of research. My mom was always like, you know, you need to research, okay, what do you want to do? Look at the company, look at the company's customers, what do they do? And be very open and willing to learn. And so I started at the bank because, you know, that's a very foundational, fundamental thing that I not only can take with me professionally, but also personally. And I really had a desire to be very financially literate so that I can make the best decisions with my money. I can make the best decisions with my money while in college and post-college. And so I worked there. I built my ability to interact with customers on a consumer basis, and then business to business, and then talking to other small business entrepreneurs and things like that. And then the pandemic happened, and that changed a lot of things for me, and I had to shift my mindset. And then I was like, okay, let me go tech focused because that is my degree, and that is where I kind of sparked my interest for the tech field. And so I did Trailheads in high school, and that's where I learned about Salesforce. And my mother actually ended up working at Salesforce during the pandemic. Previously, she had been at her company for my whole life, 19 years. Wow. And so she told me, like, you know, don't do what I did. Like, not to say it's anything wrong with that, but be open, be willing to be adaptable and change. And so I looked at Salesforce, and I really liked their company model. I liked the culture. I like what they stood for and their values. And that's what attracted me to Salesforce. And I did a program called Year Up during that pandemic time. I was taking about 8 college courses. Wow. And a lot of people were like, wow, that's a lot. And I was like, you know what? I have nothing better to do but be in the house, so why not upskill academically as well as get that experience. So I was a system specialist intern, and I was there working on a caseload with a team, and it gave me good insight on the corporate space. The work was fine, but it wasn't that I didn't enjoy it. That was something that I was like, you know, I don't know if this is what I want to do. However, I talked to a lot of people throughout the company who had a lot of roles, and from there, I was able to kind of speak to someone, and I'm like, wow, your role sounds interesting, a consultant, tech sales. I didn't want to code. I knew that I had to have that technical acumen to be able to do that, but I felt as though I would thrive in a space that was more customer facing. And so then I went on to Microsoft, and I had a connection with them prior because I was a part of their camp. And so went on to do that, came back to Salesforce, and from there on, now I'm just, you know, staying awesome. That same student.
Yeah. And it kind of ties into what Lewis was saying, is that kind of journey of discovery, trying different things, being open, and then just seeing, we don't know until we try something, right? And then what about you, Chuck? I mean, you're kind of in that happy medium between employers and students that are graduating, and you kind of see it from both sides. What are you hearing from your students as to what they look for in their work and graduation?
Well, I think that the thing I'd throw out on the table real quick is the fact that this generation is not lazy. This generation is very trainable. The problem is, or the opportunity is that they had the privilege of going through COVID. And if you're a teenager, young adult, and you spent 2 years, year and a half, 2 years going through that mess, and then coming out and you want to be a career person, etc., and you're very, very well trained with technology. The old saying, you know, if you want your TV set up so it'll record a program, get one of your kids to go turn it on. That very smart people. What I find is, and I think we're going to talk a little bit later about it, is to me the biggest important thing for the students and for our young people coming into the workforce is learning how to communicate. And when I say that, you go, oh, we know how to communicate, we got a phone, we can, you know, I'm texting my friends all the time, I'm always on. Yeah, but it's person to person, human to human. But with that comes the fact that I find the Gen Z individuals to be very authentic, and they expect transparency. So, like, I go back to my history in the business world. I hired young people and I expected them to do certain things a certain way when I wanted it done, etc. Those days are long gone. You have to communicate both from the adult professional standpoint as well as the intermingling of the generation and how they talk to each other. So I'm excited. I'm fortunate. I spend time with a couple hundred of them each semester, and they're brilliant, smart, hold your feet to the fire.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes in our corporate structure, some of our senior people don't want to have their feet held to the fire, and there's nothing worse than a new hire coming in and telling you how to redo the company. And I go to that. Not everybody thinks that way, but it's learning how to communicate, how to serve information that the person may not want to hear, etc. So that would be my big thing, is smart generation.
And the world is in their hands, in all of our hands through the internet, right? So discovery, journey, communications, all those important things. And there's just so many topics to pack into this discussion that I thought I'd try something different with you all. I'm going to do something called our lightning round, because there's so many differing opinions and perspectives, and we're here not to judge, but purely to kind of share all these different perspectives. And I would love for you all in the audience, as we go through this lightning round of all these different topics around workplace culture, share your perspective and your opinion in the comments, and let's discuss. So I'm going to toss out a few different topics and would love to just kind of get your snappy perspectives around each of them. I'll start with you, Louis. This kind of balance between choosing work-life balance or this hustle grind culture that we have nowadays. Your thoughts?
I think this is where, especially looking at this new generation, there is a large gap between the different folks. You have some that are, still living with their parents up until, in the mid-30s. They're going back, it's the boomerang. And I know that's outside the Gen Z, but it's blending over. And then you have the other ones that are like, I want to be CEO by the time I'm 25. And there's that balance between where they're at. You look at when people are having kids, when they're getting married. I read a study that's saying there's more people having kids in their 30s than there is in their 20s now. So you're pushing them over there. So I think it's a lot of the individuals, you can't stereotype as much, because you have some people that are very, very driven and they want to be there. And then you have others that, their parents still pay their bills. They're on the parents' insurance and all that. And it's a whole range. And so when you're talking to them, it's hard to figure out which one are you talking to and what are your ambitions. And with this hybrid environment where you have some people that are 100% remote, sometimes it's easier to slide under the radar. You're not seen. People aren't seeing you. So how do you have that? And I think it goes back to a lot of Chuck's points on communication. If you are there, how do you make an impact? How do you tell people what you're doing? How do you have those conversations with executive and senior leaders? So it's very interesting on how all of this is playing out with the new generation.
And Kiara, what do you and your friends, what are you choosing, or what do people lean towards?
Like Louis said, it depends. To me, it depends on the day. It may depend on the year. It may depend on the objective. So to have an overall balance, I'd say work-life balance. Hustle culture is great. And sometimes I feel as though it may be necessary with inflation and with the current economy that we're in. Like you said, there's a lot of, students still living with their parents and navigating the world of finances and working. Yeah. And so there will be a time and space where hustle culture, is necessary. And then will be a time where I need that work-life balance.
Mm-hmm. And then Chuck, what are your students saying? What are they preferring these days?
There's definitely a focus on the life and work and where the two fit together. I think one of the interesting things is this particular generation had the privilege of COVID, to where they have been in an environment where they didn't have to work.
Yeah.
Or they were in an environment that their needs were being fulfilled without holding a job. And so we're not looking at the young person coming out of college ready to take on that job and scared to death that they don't get a job, they won't be able to pay their rent, they won't be able to eat. They've experienced an opportunity where they don't have to necessarily worry about that. and they're able to really look at their life and the balance we keep talking about in regards to what they want to do going forward or not, and have a little bit of a runway to work with. Now, I go back to the comment that was mentioned a moment ago. We do have an economy that's breathing down our necks, and these young people want to get started. They want to be in the workplace. They want to start doing things. So it's really a paradox between the two of having been able to experience that, and then also their freedom, and then falling into a work world that's going to take care of their needs. So
I think you're seeing a lot of, with college prices going up and inflation going up, home prices are up. The students graduating, they might have 20, 40, 6 figures of debt. Then they're trying to get a house, and we're in Dallas. I would assume, what's the median house? Probably around 350, 400, and even that's, depending on the neighborhood, that's not even getting you looked at. So you have these bills on top of that. So sometimes people are needing that longer runway to be able to be financially independent. That's something you somewhat have to consider when you're looking at them. Yeah, okay, they live with their parents, but you know what? They're saving everything. They're about to go pay cash for this car or for this house. So it's very interesting.
Options have definitely opened up.
yes.
Yeah.
I want to toss out this topic also and get your quick perspective. The choice between pursuing Fortune 500 companies and brands and aiming for those kind of corporate jobs, or going for maybe small, medium-sized boutique firm, and what are some of the preferences? Kiara, I'd love to hear your perspective.
As somebody who has gotten wrapped into the social media hype of the big companies, obviously the Fortune 500, it's very attractive to say the Fortune 500 with the benefits that they give you in navigating that world. However, I'd like to say that I'm not reserved to the smaller boutiques. So it depends. In this economy right now, it's like, do you really have a choice in terms of being picky?
Yeah. What do you think, Chuck?
Well, I have a lot of the students who get jobs, and they immediately call back, and you get one of two things. You either get a student who's having their first time in the business world, and they expect certain things. I think I've had more conversation about, Professor, should I just quit? I can't stand the blah. And actually those first jobs are where you learn how to communicate in the real world. And so it's eye-opening for a lot of these young people. But also I think the people that are hiring, the large corporations, the boutiques, the startups, whatever you want, the people that are in charge and making the day-to-day decisions have to realize what's going on with that potential employee too, that they're coming in with probably more knowledge of the world than some of their bosses have. And how do you bring those two together? And then I go all across the board. There's kids that I've got, young people. My wife says, don't call them kids. I'm old, I can call them kids. But the young people get these jobs, and they're in big corporations. There's small boutiques, and then a lot of startups. Again, COVID provided the opportunity for them to be stopped, to be able to look at what could I build and bring to the table, as opposed to having to go to a company.
Lewis, what are your thoughts?
I think a lot of it, goes into, the big companies. Some of them have great training programs. So as somebody hiring, I love poaching from them. Hey, you spent 2 years at this one, awesome, come on board. But then I think from, how do you want to build your brand? How do you want to put your footprint in there? If I go to a company that has 50,000 employees, does more than 10 people know me? Where if I go to a boutique firm that has 1,000 or 500, you probably know a lot of people. You probably get to interact with the CEO. I go work at Microsoft. CEO probably doesn't want to listen to me. I go work at a boutique firm. CEO wants to take me to lunch or to dinner. And I think there's some of that because, there's a lot of, and to Chuck's point, there's a lot of, these students are having great ideas. They have a lot of ideas they want to share. At big corporations, you're not going to be able to share that with anybody. You're just going to, you might be able to tell your manager or maybe your product team, but how much change are you able to influence? And sometimes that does happen at big companies. I don't want it to seem like it doesn't, but you have a much bigger stage, I think, sometimes in the boutique firms because you know all the employees. You can feel what that culture is. Microsoft, Amazon, and even Twitter, they have reputations. You see people post on social media, hey, look at this, the life. I come in at 3 o'clock, I go to yoga, I go to there, and then I leave at 3 o'clock or at 5 o'clock, and then I get laid off, unfortunately. But it's made it look like it's so great. In reality, no, there's a lot of hard work that you have to get into there, and people will notice that. So how much of a change do you want to be able to influence? So I think going to those boutiques and those smaller companies, you have a voice. The executive leadership, the senior leadership knows your name, and you can actually really take those ideas, push them out, and go for it.
Mm-hmm. And I want to give a quick shout out to Nathan Gastineau. His comment in there around the hustle culture is more a symptom of the shortfalls of our economy and the lack of wealth distribution than something that Gen Z is excited about doing. It's an unfortunate necessity for some folks early in their careers and competing to own property and pay bills these days. Very much tied to what you were saying, Louis. So real quick as well, these days we're pushing for more sustainability, social causes, and the importance of that. And what do you see a corporate role in social causes and responsibility as? Kiara?
In today's time, I feel as though it's necessary. With social media and how fast news transfers, you want to see that companies have your back at, supporting you where you come from, your initiatives and things of that nature. So I think companies are starting to see that this is no longer an option. When people choose where they want to work, they look at that. So I think that's a big necessary step for companies to implement.
That culture, again, workplace culture. Chuck, what are your perspectives around corporate responsibility and causes?
I'm going to throw out my word, communication. There's a lot of opportunities out there. And unfortunately, I think there's some miscommunication between leadership and the new employees. An employee comes on board and they see a lot of opportunities for the company to do. They may not know all the elements behind that discussion point. But in the same vein, the senior leadership who's been at it a long time has to realize that they've got to trust a talent that they're working with that can do a lot of things, but you got to communicate with them why you do it. Who, what, why, where, when, and how. Why does the company do it that way? As opposed to just saying, I want you to go do this, or I want you to go do that. Communication. And I think that's healthy for all people when you've got more communication going on.
100%. And Louis, I know CG is involved with a lot of social causes like with Tarrant County Food Bank, feeding and volunteering. And how do you think that kind of contributes to the culture that's put out there and whether someone joins you guys or not in terms of your involvement with community?
I think service and community is a big part. If we're back there and we're not helping out the community or going back, regardless of the corporation, I think that's part of our rights. Let's go help out. Let's build this community. We're going to live there. We're building the culture. We're doing it. I think sometimes depending on the company's views of what the social issues are, I've seen where some companies have actually undermined their purpose. The leadership comes out with we're going to stand for this cause. And then they look at their population and maybe 50% is for it, and the other 50 is behind it. So their whole idea of, wanting to go for maybe a more inclusive stand, they've just excluded half of their population. And it's something I think you have to put a lot of thought in and a time of what areas do we want to focus on? Some of them are very easy. Let's go help. Let's go to the food banks. Those are great. More of the ones, go turn on the news. I bet there's 10 topics on there. You make it, look at our last election, 50% voted for one guy, 50% voted for the other guy, and or close enough. And you have a very split personality. I think now with all virtual, you have people that live on this coast or this coast and this one. So you're blending instead of your kind of local tribe, you now have this larger area. So as a company, how do you represent your audience? How do you find areas that we can all get behind so you're not accidentally, excluding more of your population? So it's a fine line, but I do think you have to help out with the community you're doing. So is it, we're going to break our offices doing here. We have a delivery center overseas, and we actually coordinated one of them where our Arkansas office and our India office were doing some, 24 hours of giving. And so they'd pick it up and pass the baton so you can incorporate those different areas, both making different impacts. So a lot of different creative ways that technology gives us, but a lot of ways that the platform, you can go look at the news. Hey, this company made this statement and their stock is dropping here or they're going up. So it can be a double-edged sword, I think, sometimes.
Yes.
or finding those common causes, like
Definitely.
you said. Yeah. So since this show is all about Generation Z, we wanted to kind of bring to you a quick video around the interns that CG Infinity has kind of brought together over the last few months and have them share their perspectives and insights with you. So let's play that video right now.
If a job is the right fit for you and you're happy doing it, it wouldn't feel like a job. It's very important to choose the right kind of job, irrespective of the size of the business.
You know, I've come to realize that they didn't hire me as a developer strictly. You know, I have a whole life experience outside of this job to draw from.
Do not get tired of applying to jobs. I think that's one big thing where we stop usually. Make sure you keep applying, go for it. A rejection is part of the process and it's going to come no matter what.
Connection, connection, connection. Leverage every connection there is. Talk to your friends, make a LinkedIn profile, go to LinkedIn, get connections.
It's also about networking and making memories, meeting new people.
If you keep applying, if you keep making connections over time, you will find the perfect role that you are looking for. I definitely go for flexibility. So can I stay a few days at home? Can I work at the office for the other 2 days? Is, I think, pretty important given how the circumstances are. And I think it also gives you a good work-life balance.
Flexibility is number one, and any company that's flexible in one major area, say scheduling, they're going to be flexible in other areas as well.
Internships are like that stepping stone wherein you get to see what the company does or what the entire field is all about.
If you are doing an internship, it gives you a 360-degree experience where you can work on multiple projects, where you can collaborate with multiple teams.
It gives you industry experience, which is much required. It gives you the readiness for you to enter the corporate world.
So I think internships are really important and should be targeted by each and every student.
Be persistent in what you're doing. And not a lot of courses might make sense to you, but at the end of the day, when you start a job, when you start applying all those things, it does make a difference.
Don't lose hope because you got this.
Great to hear from their perspectives. I want to give a quick shout out. I see somebody, Lee Cupido from South Africa, tuning in to our live. So that's so cool. Thank you for joining us. Our next section here is all around career development and kind of how do we mentor, how do we intern, how do we develop the next generation. And I want to start off with you, Louis. As you go through your interviews with folks, what are the typical questions that you're asking the fresh grads and junior consultants?
Oh, great question. I think a lot of it, our questions were looking around attitude and aptitude. What is your attitude of how you're going into this? And what is your aptitude? And some of that's, it's hard to grasp because, think of college, you've learned all of these different things. Sometimes it's more theoretical, less hands-on. But when you start talking to them, it's, what happens when you're going to be pushed outside your boundaries? Or what happens when you hit a wall? Are you going to climb over it? Are you going to break it down? Are you going to say, I tried? And a lot of the questions that we're going after, it's really kind of geared more towards, can you wear multiple hats? Are you going to be happy with that? Do you like getting to go in different areas? What are your career aspirations? How are you going to go down there? How have you got to some of those? So I think just to sum it up, really around attitude and aptitude, those are the two most important things I can ever talk to a candidate.
Absolutely, because the data is available now
Right,
out in the world,
exactly.
right?
That's very true.
So Chuck, from your perspective, you're preparing students for the working world, and you talk obviously about the importance of communication. What are some of the other soft skills that you think students need to be developing?
Well, I'll jump quickly on the statement was just made a moment ago as to attitude.
Yeah.
Attitude. No, I think attitude is very important. I make the comment that I can teach skills.
Right.
The aptitude, you're going to learn that wherever you go to work. You need to come in being able to write a complete sentence and be able to do all those things. But once you're in a job situation, I see the attitude as being that. The leadership, being on time. There was an admiral that spoke at A&M a couple years ago, and his whole speech in the graduation was about making your bed.
Yeah.
And of course, this young generation was very, very smart, got all these computers, all this equipment. They understand technology inside and out. And there's some real basic elements of I don't call them soft skills anymore. I call them fundamentals.
Right.
Because the very smart individual, if you tell them they got soft skills, they look at you like, I'm here at college, I've got good grades. Why would you say I have soft skills? But it's the attitude that I think is the most important.
Yeah, especially in this age of AI, just being on time to work is a core important skill. Kiara, you've had some amazing internships, so I'm sure some of the folks in the audience are very curious. How do you get these kind of internships at these big brand tech companies?
So from my understanding and my experience, when I first got in college, I was kind of oblivious of how that process went. And so my first year, I didn't get an internship. And so I had to chalk that up. I had to do research, and I found out that, hey, you have to be an early bird, an early riser. Companies are not looking for interns in spring. They've already hired them. And I learned that. I got on the ball, having a good resume. Luckily, I had a good mother who was able to invest in me in that. I had a good network, a lot of friends. You know, Ari, she's a very influential person in there, and they helped build that skill. How do I actually translate the skills I've done onto a professional paper that, you know, is supposed to make me marketable? So having that, like you said, Chuck, those fundamentals right there, having that soft skill, and then being strategic in networking. Your network is your net worth, and I heard that a lot in a lot of the camps and seminars that I went to from a lot of the people, so I kept that with me. And that's where a lot of my internships came from, networking. I applied to many and got rejected by many, but having those people in my corner and them believing in me, and then just going after it and not taking no for an answer.
Absolutely, absolutely. Louis, I have a question here in the audience from Leah. As an employer, when you see Gen Z kind of hopping around, still trying to figure out what they like and don't like, and maybe they're trying and their resume is kind of job hopping. When you see that, what are you thinking as an employer?
I do get a little bit of red flags. I think definitely the average tenure is you don't have lifers anymore. I mean, that was you used to see that. Now about 2 years is what I expect to be out there. When I see 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, that makes me a little bit nervous. And I think some of it could be on how, going back to communication, how are you interviewing? Interviewing should always be a two-way street. Mm-hmm. You want to know me, but I need to know about you as a company, and am I going to be a good fit? But I think there is a much higher tolerance to seeing people at different fields and doing that, and now with the ability to work remote, hey, there's this Silicon Valley job, I want to go take it, and you can do a lot of that. So some of it, but at the end of it, just have a conversation with them. Hey, what's going on? Why were you there for 3 months, 9 months? Oh, well, my family member got sick. Okay, makes sense. Great, let's chat.
Right. Or put that in a cover letter so it explains the gaps.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, awesome. So for this lightning round around career development, I want to go around and ask you all different topics around Gen Z. So real quick, Kiara, I'm going to kind of pick on you first. Your kind of response to, are Gen Z looking for compensation or good workplace culture?
Ooh, the best of both worlds. The best of both worlds. The compensation has to be there in today's time. That drives us, considering our current economy. However, that does not mean that we don't look at that company culture, because, like you said, you wake up in the morning, you see on Twitter, oh, this company said this statement, and boom, it's like, they may be a little sketchy to work for if this statement got out like that, like what is really under the surface. So compensation overall, but company culture is also a runner-up.
Close second. Mm-hmm. Chuck, what are your students looking for, compensation versus culture?
I think at our university, the compensation is obviously a point of observation, but they're also looking for the capability of starting that life they want to start and being able to start to set. And one of the things I want to push back to them a little bit is your first job's not where you're going to die.
Yes, there's a quote right there.
You may need to change jobs and find those right things. But it, like was said, it's got to be a balance of the two. And I even think the other generations look to that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Let us know in the comments your thoughts around kind of this debate between compensation versus culture. Louis, from your perspective?
I think that, obviously both. And I think as as an employer or as a leader, you want to invest in your high performers. Might sound rough, but if you have a low performer, you can spend 80% of your time and you're not going to get anything out of them. But those top performers, I want to make an environment where they don't want to leave. Let's go figure out what the market's doing and help them drive your culture. The culture at some companies is made up by a group of folks behind closed doors, and they say, this is our culture. But no, your culture is everybody in there that's going and driving. So let's make sure we're rewarding and finding unique ways to go after it, because I think with remote, it's made it where typically you do a market analysis of pricing and you're looking at the DFW market. But now that you can hire across the nation, you need to not only be competitive in your region, but what other people are trying to poach them. And I think it's it's changed a way, and it's also changed some people's perspectives. Maybe they got this quick job at a startup, they had made great money, startup went under, wasn't ran right. Now they're like, I'd like to keep that salary. And it's like, well, the market's changed a little bit, and how do you find that happy balance between those?
Yeah. So outside of compensation, what do you think is one key benefit that students are also looking for, Kiara?
Wellness and flexibility. Obviously, hybrid and working from home is very, very big. Like, I like to travel, so I can still get my work done. And if you trust me enough to be remote at my home, please trust me. If I'm traveling, I say I'm going to do what I'm going to say. So that balance right there, that flexibility and wellness is super huge. When I was at Salesforce, they had something called Wellness Fridays, where there was one Friday out of the month where we were able to be off that whole Friday, and whatever wellness looked like for you, that's what you did. And they honored that, and that changed the game for me, as well as them investing in your wellness. Here's a stipend every month that goes to something that is for your well-being, whether that's a healthy cooking class, that's a gym membership. So that element as well.
And then from what are you hearing, the buzz from your students is one key benefit that they're looking for?
I think it would be the flexibility of the working in an office or working from home, etc. And there's so many elements that make up that situation. Again, we're out of it now, but we still got this COVID hanging over us, and how that affected different jobs. There's certain jobs that if your job's to turn on the light, you got to be in the building.
Right.
If your job's just talking on the phones are, it's, I'm going to say it again, communication that you have to understand. When you go into a job, if I go into a job and my job is to simplify, turn on and off the lights, and I show up on work and I say I want to work from home, we weren't communicating, we weren't talking. And I think most companies are willing to figure out the best way for a good attitude to be applied to that company.
Yeah. And to your point earlier, communication plus the transparency.
Yeah,
too.
yes.
Yeah. Louis, one key benefit?
I think the key benefit is the people. I think getting in there and going to go work with smart folks that know that they're putting in just as much of the hard effort that you are. And if you need to go take a vacation, you want to go do that, I don't want people calling me on my vacation. I want to be able to go in there and know that my coworkers, my teammates, they have my back in there. And I think there's something where you get together some fun, smart people. And I mean, yeah, it's still going to be hard work, but you get to have fun. You get to build those connections, the relationships with that. If you're going in, checking in, clocking in and clocking out every day, and you're not talking to anybody, you're going to get bored. You're going to get burnout. You're not going to build that community inside there. So I think the people that you get to talk to, you get to interview, get to shape of what does that company look like? What do they stand for?
And a student perspective from our comments, Preston Gray at Dallas College, touching on what Louis said, there is a desire to find a company with a culture that you belong within And that can be the reason for short-term stints in the resume. In a way, you only know what you like or don't like when you get to experience it and your perspective within that. So true. And so now I want to play for you part 2 of our video series, interviewing UTD interns and students and getting their additional perspectives.
Kudos to our human race that we're making AI this smart, but again, it's going to come back and bite us. It's not the AI who's going to replace the humans, but it's going to be the person who's very good at AI.
Data is the backbone of everything.
It's just another tool for us to use. There's people out there that have kind of gone into panic mode over it in our industry, particularly with ChatGPT, and said, oh, programmers aren't going to be a thing anymore, and that's a load of hogwash.
It's going to replace a lot of jobs in a lot of sectors and domains. So prepare yourself, prepare everyone. I think everyone should prepare.
I do agree that it will replace some parts of it, like generating reports or dashboards.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'll still be working at CG Infinity. I'm not going anywhere.
5 years down the lane, I want to see myself leading a large team of data enthusiasts.
But I think in 5 years, I look to be a product leader. I want to be working on a product or a software product where I'm handling the decisions.
I want to be a principal data scientist.
I see myself working as a corporate slave, as a business analyst, hopefully a data scientist.
You're not just hired for whatever position they hire you for. You're not just hired for your certificate. You're not just hired for your diploma. You're hired because you bring unique perspective, unique life experience, unique mindsets. All these things tie into what makes you you and what makes you a marketable employee.
So our next segment is all around the future of work. And we can't talk about the future without the hot topic of the day, artificial intelligence and AI. Chuck, from your perspective, you're in the retail technology space and you're grooming your students and teaching them in that space. Some of those things are moving from brick and mortar to online. What are some of the changes to the future of work that you see for your students in that industry?
Well, I think the biggest change is, and a little side story, I was around back when the PC first showed up on the, and the mainframe people were sure that the world was going to go, it was over with, we might as well not do anything else, because how can we let information leave the building? How, you can't, these guys, they haven't been trained, AI is a little more sophisticated than that, but I think the positive is going to outweigh the negative. And yes, at UTD, we're fortunate that we have a very strong computer focus. In AI, we just had a hackathon on AI, and we had retail. They were writing code for retailers, etc. So our students are very much more knowledgeable than I am in some of these new technologies. But I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be great. And the retailers are right now, retailers tend to usually be a little bit behind the cutting edge because they want to, before they bring it to their customers, they want to make sure it makes sense. And a lot of retailers, I've been in a conference this week that was nothing but AI. How's AI going to apply to what we're doing? And so we're all learning. We're all learning. And
now, Louis, looking after data and analytics and the cloud, it's a lot of technology. So how is the future of work going to look like working with AI?
Yeah, I think there's two different ways I typically look. Internal, how our internal employees, and external, how our customers. Internally, we can go in. I can give you a block of code. You can put it into something like ChatGPT and say, "Tell me what this does. I don't understand. I'm a brand new developer." And it goes, "Oh, look at it. It's actually calling. It's going to update, the time cards on here," and it explains all it out. If you change this, or you can go say, "You know what? I need to go write a program that will build a simple website." You can go back to some of these tools, and it might not be perfect. It might get you 70% of the way there, but from an accelerator process, it's much easier to look at the code and say, oh, these 3 things are wrong, than to try to figure out, okay, how do I build all of it? Where do I start? It's kind of like, that when you're typing the essay, it's sitting there, you'll sit around waiting to type the essay, and then you finally do it. So I think internally, as a learning element and accelerator, our customers, they're asking the same thing. They're like, how do I do this securely? How can I, we just wrapped up a project where we were leveraging some of the ChatGPT feature to look at their data. So what if we connected all of your systems, we did it in a secured way, but I can now type in there instead of saying, what loans do we think are going to default? Or who are my best customer segmentations? Before, you would put in a request to IT, they'd hand you stuff, you go back, you analyze it in Excel. Now we're able to just do that natural language on there, and I think this is where you're seeing a lot of companies adopt it.
Now, Kiara, you're in the era of ChatGPT, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right into the introduction of work there. What are you kind of seeing, and how do you see you and your friends leveraging it for work as well as life?
Gosh, it's funny because I feel as though it was a little too late. I've graduated already. Not to say, as a professor, I wouldn't have cheated, but I would have leveraged my resources, what I like to say. However, I would say I'm an early adopter. I just read an article this week that said even though there is a lot of talk around ChatGPT and AI, only 14% of people are actually using it. My mother and I have constant conversations with people about AI and things of that nature. And I've heard of ChatGPT, but they haven't used it. Me, on the other hand, I've used it. I've used it to pass certifications in the sense of explain this question, can you break down this process? And then in terms of just life, I've seen ChatGPT build out workout plans and meal plans and travel plans instead of the traditional route of let me hire someone who can do my travel itinerary. You can type into ChatGPT specifically where you're going, the duration of your stay, your interest, and it will build you out an itinerary of food places and entertainment and things of that nature. So I've been adopting it and an avid user. I have it saved on my web browser.
It's almost like if you don't leverage it, we're going to be left behind for sure.
Yes.
And now, for the future of work, we're seeing more and more of this kind of different pathways. It used to be, let's get that corporate job, let's climb the corporate ladder, and then that's it. But now we have things like entrepreneurship, the creator economy, intrapreneurship, which is the entrepreneur that's within a corporate environment. Louis, what are your thoughts between these kind of 3 paths that people can take? Corporate, intrapreneurship, entrepreneurship. What do you think?
The entrepreneur and the entrepreneur, I love the idea. I love the passion. If you have somebody straight out of school ready to take on the world, and you go kind of put them in, behind a desk, sitting there for 40 hours a week, hey, I don't care about your creativity. No. What if you can empower them to, help give them a little direction, maybe give them a little budget around there, go build it out. We're going to back you. There's still, at the end of the day, at company, we still need to make money, but can we funnel some of this and let's go try out these ideas and learn how to fail on some of them too. I mean, failure, that's a great learning tool. So go in, have that mindset, that drive to go in and that passion. Now, let's go support it. Let's go mentor these people. Let's go train them up and do it. And I think that's one of the biggest things is if companies are not empowering their people or trying to get them excited about that, you're missing out so much. And they're going to go to some other startup, bring their idea, and go make a lot of money. And you're going to be sitting in the rearview mirror saying, why did I not empower that person? Yeah.
Chuck, do you see any of your students taking the entrepreneurial path?
Oh boy. Yes, we have a lot of startup programs, entrepreneurial programs going on. These young adults come up with some phenomenal ideas.
Yeah.
And then we're fortunate, especially in this market, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we have a lot of companies that are very strong mentors to help them go through this and get involved with new ideas, et cetera. And I think one of the comments that was made about failure is so important. Being able to learn from mistakes, et cetera. And I'll be honest, the majority of the startups of young adults don't always succeed. The percentages are such that it's usually in the 40s is about where you're really traditionally going to really take off. But those people at in the 40s who are now taken off, I can guarantee they had failures previously, because you've got to have a failure to be able to learn from this, etc. But I think in the collegiate world, all the universities here in North Texas have entrepreneur programs and mentoring going on, etc. for that.
So many more choices these
Yes.
days,
Yes.
for sure. And Kiara, from your perspective, are any of your friends going down the entrepreneurial path versus the corporate path?
Well, right now I'd say no. There is no, but that passion is and that drive is still there. There is a plan for it to go there. I'd like to say, like, I had an entrepreneurial spirit. In high school, I did work at a daycare. I worked at my local ISD's after school care program, and I was so good. The kids loved me, the parents loved me. I was able to be a nanny and have my own business. People would ask me, hey, do you do this like outside of work? And I'm like, absolutely. And then I did it so well that I was able to make more doing less, so kind of like my own way of scaling it and step out instead of going through the school. So I have that spirit in me. However, right now I still am eager to learn and gain that knowledge and skill set. And also, I'm still on the fence of being okay with failing to that extent. Like I remember I had a college camp, and a professor, he told us, he was like, failing is not bad. It's one of the greatest gifts that you can receive. Just fail fast and then pick back up. So I'm still, at that point where I'm like, okay, if I step out on that, I have to be comfortable and prepared to fail and be ready to fail fast and get back up.
Okay, one word lightning round to wrap things up.
Okay.
Okay?
One word. It's going to be hard.
Louis, for you specifically, water cooler conversations and osmosis versus formal sit-down mentorship.
Water coolers all the way.
Got it. Okay. Chuck, for your perspective, academic learning versus internship hands-on experience.
That's tough. I think of the hands-on experience. And then let me sub kind of underneath. In academia, there can be those hands-on learning experiences, depending on the professor and the way they teach and what the subject is. So I think the experience and the hand-on is probably the most important.
Awesome. Kiara, formal training or YouTube University?
In terms of career, formal training. YouTube University, supplemental.
Got it. Okay. So there you have it, folks. There's tons of topics that we can easily dive into further around Generation Z and the future of work. We want to hear your perspective around some of those topics that we talked to today. We're going to go through all the comments, and if we missed any of your questions, we'll definitely follow up with that. But in the meantime, we want to give a shout out to our friends at the Alliance of Technology and Women, ATW. They have an event coming up, and you'll see that, Humans and Machines. That is tomorrow at UTD at 6 p.m. So be sure to join us for that as well. We'll definitely be attending that. And for those of you out there, be sure to join us in 2 months on Wednesday, August 16th, as we talk all around the energy industry and the state of that and the hot topics around the energy industry. So save that date, Wednesday, August 16th at noon. And as I wrap up the show, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, CG Infinity. For them, their amazing tagline, people first, driven to transform. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.